Well, hello, and thank you for joining us for this very special vegan business panel as part of VegFest UK Online. My name is David Pannell, and I'm the co-founder of Vegan Business Tribe and just all-round vegan business champion, especially today, because today we're talking about the subject of how to actually start a vegan business. Now, it would be extremely boring if I was just to talk about this topic myself for the next 45, 50 minutes or so. So thankfully, I'm joined by four amazing fellow vegan business owners who are all wonderful, ethical vegans themselves. So just to quickly go around the virtual room and introduce who I'm joined with today. So first of all, we've got Mitali Deypurkaystha from Let's Tell Your Story Publishing. And Mitali helps vegan and ethical entrepreneurs become published authors, and we could all do with a little bit of that. Then we've got Keith Lesser from Vegan Accountants, and Vegan Accountants provide accountancy services and financial management for ethical businesses. Then we have Steve Hutchins from DoGood, who produce chef-cooked frozen vegan dog food. And in terms of starting a vegan business, DoGood are right at the launch stage as we speak. So it'd be great to get an update on where you're at the moment on that one. And then finally, we've also got Trevor Banerjee from the Freedom Switch. And Trevor runs a startup agency for socially conscious businesses. And can I just say, what a head-spinning lineup of amazing vegan businesses. I wish we could spend an hour chatting to each of you individually. But what I want to do, just before we get into the general discussion, is spend just 2 minutes each, and I think it might have to be literally just 2 minutes, just sharing your own startup journey. Because most people start out working for someone else. And for some people, they will spend their whole career working for other people's companies. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. But all of us here today at some point decided that we wanted to have our own business. I include myself in that statement. I think I started my first business something like 20 years ago, and I'm on my 5th or 6th business now. So for somebody who hasn't yet taken that plunge, it would just be really interesting to hear what you took. And also, is running your own business and being your own boss as glamorous as people think? And I'll ask that question first to Trevor from the Freedom Switch, because most people think that when you start up your own business, you just quit your day job and you go tell your boss where to stuff that job, and then you start your own company. So is that what happened to you, Trevor?
That is exactly what happened to me, David. but that is exactly what I recommend you do not do, because I did that, and there was a lot of hardship and lots of trials and tribulations in looking to go from no job to starting a business that actually gives you the revenue that you're looking for. But my story is I worked in the corporate space for a long time, for 10 years, quit my job very Jerry Maguire style one day, and then tried to figure things out. Started off as a life coach first, that transitioned to business coaching, which then transitioned to startup coaching. And as my vegan and my personal passions developed, I realized that was going to be where I would work with only ethical and conscious businesses like all of these amazing vegan entrepreneurs out there.
Oh, thank you for that, Trevor. And that's really good to hear. And I wish I had a recording of that Jerry Maguire moment. So that'll be wonderful to see. I'll just move on to Keith next from Vegan Accountants. Now, Keith, I know that you come from a family business background. So that idea of creating your employment was probably something you already had in mind. But you actually took over Vegan Accountants as an established company and then grew it rather than launching a new business from scratch.
Yeah, so we took over Vegan Accountants in the summer of 2020. So I look back and I'm not really sure what I was thinking, doing an acquisition as such during a pandemic, but it seemed like a really good idea at the time. So no, I'm glad we did it. And, it's obviously then aligning our expertise with my ethics and vegan passion. So, it fits in well. And then, we've grown the business since we've taken that on. So, I also remember kind of moving from corporate world to the family business, and did that gradually actually, because I did a bit of training for a year or so just to get up to speed, and moved over. But I think employment versus self-employment's an interesting one. I mean, I wouldn't say, it's not really better or worse. There's obviously pros and cons. I mean, in a way, it's more stressful, but more rewarding. So, you know, you have to decide what you want, really.
Absolutely. And I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about that later. Now, I'll come to Mitali next, because like Keith, you also took on an established company, Let's Tell Your Story, instead of launching from scratch. So has that actually made a difference in how quickly you were able to get up and running?
Huge difference, a really big difference, David. So I'm a ghostwriter. I shouldn't say that. I was a ghostwriter. I'm not a ghostwriter anymore. So I've written 7 books. And then last year I decided I'd like to teach people how to write books, simply because the first book I wrote took me 15 months to write. And the 7th book I wrote took me 6 weeks. And I just figured, right, I've got a structure now. Why not teach people the structure? But as a ghostwriter, you hand over the manuscript, and then the next time you speak to your client, they're inviting you to a launch party. I didn't see what happened from manuscript stage to published book stage. So by taking on an established business that had all those processes in place, made things a lot easier and error-free for me. So I'm really, really glad.
Absolutely amazing. And then finally, I'm just going to come to Steve from DoGood Dog Food. And I think, Steve, that your story is perhaps more typical of what people think starting up a business is actually going to be like. You know, DoGood is the classic story of you looking for a solution to your own problem, not being able to find it, and so deciding to create your own. So how long did it actually take you to get DoGood to launch?
So yeah, similar to Trevor, I quit my job in the midst of the global pandemic, just on a reassessment of my life. You know, working in a corporate job where I've got nice benefits, but I was quite unsatisfied, not really passionate about the industry. So it took a global pandemic for me to kind of take the plunge and combine my passions of nutrition and dogs and my dogs to launch DoGood. Our story started in Cambodia, where I'd never had a dog in my life, and in Cambodia there was no such thing as pet dogs, so they were either guard dogs or they were food. And I was driving along one day and saw a beagle in a cage at the side of the road in 35-degree heat that was being sold for dog meat, I assumed. And I pulled over and called my wife and said, we've got to get her, we've got to save her. And you know, I had to walk her every day past the kind of dog meat spit at the end of the road, and that really got me questioning kind of, you know, why, if we think eating dog meat is so unthinkable, then why are we eating other animals, and why are we feeding our dogs other animals? So we did a lot of research and found that dogs are omnivores that can thrive on plant-based, just like humans. And so we started cooking for ourselves, and there was no commercial dog food in Cambodia, so we were just cooking for ourselves. Come back to the UK and horrified to see what's on the shelves, you know, in terms of kind of food that's cooked at high pressures and temperatures. All the nutrients are lost. Animal derivatives, things that we found out is things like bloods and bones and feathers. We didn't think our dogs could thrive on that, so we started cooking it ourselves. And as I say, you know, we fell back into our corporate jobs when we were back in the UK, but it really took the pandemic for us to say, right, there is no solution out here for us to buy this, and we're busy individuals. So we teamed up with a canine nutritionist consultant and also a Michelin star chef to help develop the recipes and bring it to market. So it's taken about a year, and we're going to touch on this later, but there's been a lot of highs and lows, and we had to delay our launch recently because at the very last moment, the kitchen that we were using to produce the food just stopped taking my calls and emails about 2 weeks before they were due to cook the first batch. And I've since found out that they actually went under and collapsed as a company. So, you know, we had to delay the launch. We'd taken pre-orders from the customers, and we had to tell them, you know, just bear with us because, you know, we've run into some trouble. So yeah, it's been a real kind of up and down journey, but I feel alive every day now doing this rather than just cruising in my corporate job. So it's thoroughly worth it.
That's absolutely amazing, Steve. And I'm going to actually start with yourself and come to you on this first question, because, you know, we've just heard there that it sort of took a global pandemic for many people to actually start their business. And if you look at, there was a survey done by SME Loan Survey in January 2020, and that showed that 64% of the UK's workforce have aspirations to set up their own business, but the vast majority of us remain as employees. So why do we think people are not launching their own business? What's stopping people? And why don't more people do it? Is it a lack of knowledge, a lack of motivation, or is it just a lack of time? So I'm going to start with yourself on that one, Steve, because you are someone who is right in the middle of it all right now.
Sure. I think being an employee is comfortable and easy. You know, you've got predictable hours, you've got nice benefits, you know, you've got a pension, you know, that be contributed by your employer. Typically, you have health cover. You know, you've got the kind of you've got the backup of a brand established company behind you. And so really stepping out on your own, for me, it was, a mixture of lack of time. You know, I might be working 40, 50, 60-hour weeks already, get home, you're tired. You find that you don't have the energy to think about anything else. And I think, but mainly it's to do with fear of the unknown and confidence to put yourself outside of your comfort zone. And as I said, I could have continued in my career quite happily, quite unsatisfied, but not too many highs, not too many lows, just kind of a general underlying base of not being passionate about what I was doing. I could have continued that till I was retired, had a nice, comfortable life, be paid quite well, and but be deeply unsatisfied. So, as I said, it took a global pandemic for my wife and I to say, why are we commuting 3 hours a day? Why are we working, 12 hours a day, every day, no time for each other, no time for our dogs, having to leave them in the house all day. And that's what made me take the plunge. And luckily for me, my wife is earning the money and she's the brains behind things. And then I'm the doer to get the stuff done for our business. So it kind of works between us. But I think it's not as glamorous as you might think, but it's definitely more rewarding. Lots of highs and lows compared to working in a company. But yeah, so I think that's probably the main reason. It's easy being an employee and it's quite comfortable. You've got to just push yourself outside your comfort zone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we can all agree that's one lucky beagle that led to all this happening. So Keith, I don't want to come to you next on this one, because when people start a business, one of the first things they do, or one of the first things they should do, is go speak to an accountant. So what do you see as the reason that more of us just don't launch our own businesses?
I think you touched on it there. I think people have this mindset that they have to do everything themselves, which, is totally overwhelming. And I mean, for example, I'm reading a book at the moment, 9 Lies About Work, and one of the chapters, it's talking about Lionel Messi. Like, he's got this amazing left foot and he's the best footballer that's ever lived, but he never uses his right foot. And I think, you can apply that, because it's I think successful businesses, they focus on, their super strengths. It's actually focusing in what you're good at, and then surrounding yourself with experts and, having that all-roundness, because, and, as accountancy as an example, you can have a great business. I've seen it. So, hundreds of examples. But if you neglect that part, your business will fail. It's inevitable. So, yeah, that's what I would say, really. Focus on what you're good at and collaborate and network. And, obviously what you've built with Vegan Business Tribe's a great example of that, really.
Thank you for that, Keith. And yeah, I mean, just to echo that, I think when people first go self-employed or launch their own business, they can go from having IT support. They can go from having a cleaner in the office. They can go from all this support, just to then trying to do absolutely everything themselves. It sometimes is quite a big jump to make. Mitali, I just want to come to you next, because you do work with a lot of entrepreneurs. So what would you say stops people from starting up their own business?
All of the above, pretty much what Steve and Keith said. I think just as humans, really, we kind of are in a semi-coma most of the time about most things. I mean, I think it's the same thing with veganism. Most of my friends aren't vegan. And that doesn't make them bad people. It's not like non-vegans are bad people. They're just in this semi-coma where they just don't want to be told that actually their lifestyles is causing a lot of harm to animals. And usually most of us have had some sort of jolt, something that happened with us in our lives that made us think, wow, animals actually are very sentient. We've got to stop doing it. It's the same thing with jobs. We just we whinge about it. We get to the pub on Friday night, it's like, oh God, I hate my boss and all that kind of thing. But we're comfortable in it, and it takes some sort of jolt. For me, it was 2013. I'm a seasonal affective disorder sufferer, and I'm a model employee during the summer months. Come the winter, I'm a nightmare. I'm ill. I just can't get out of bed. I'm on antidepressants. And I basically forced myself into having my own business because I thought I can't keep going on like this. If I have my own business, I can make my own hours. If I want to stay in bed until 10 in the morning, I can do, and I'll work straight through until 10 at night. That's why usually people set up a business either because they're passionate about something, you know, like Steve is. And I lived in Phuket, by the way, Steve. So I've seen the whole dogs in cages. It just gets to you. I can't even look sometimes. So I know it takes things like that, some sort of jolt to set up your own business, because it's hard, as you know, as Trevor says, a lot of people think it's glamorous. It might be 10 years later if you've done things right. But for the first 10 years, you're going to work harder than you ever did for a boss. Just take that as a given. That's what you're going to do.
Absolutely. And I'm going to come on to Trevor next and bring him into the conversation, because Trevor, you actually help people move from being employed to having their own company. So you must hear all the reasons under the sun that's stopping people doing this. So what do you come up against most?
Yeah, I mean, it's all of the above, everything that everyone's mentioned so far. And I'm not surprised, because we've all gone through these experiences. I think the biggest one, if I were to, you know, if I'm looking at somebody who's considering it, is usually self-doubt. It is just, am I good enough? Is it worth the fear of failure? There's all of these internal issues more than the external ones, that and it then gets presented in as if it's an external issue, as if, you know, oh, is the market right? Am I able to make money from doing something like this? And that leads us to a more practical reason, which is a lack of clarity. You know, a lot of people are very vague about these things, and that comes from having, it's the most unglamorous and the least sexiest thing. But if you've got a plan, that you're starting off on the right foot. You know, failing to plan is planning to fail. So those are the two things, I suppose, those the main ones that I could mention.
Absolutely brilliant, Trevor. And yeah, I mean, that self-confidence, that self-belief, that is such an important part of running any business. And I'm just going to stay with you to introduce the next question as well, because we're starting to see that some of the myths about running and owning your own business, they're just not true. And I think in the media, we only mainly see the upside of having your own business. And more importantly, we only actually hear the stories of the people who've been successful. In fact, you know, we've done panels in the past with people whose first business actually failed. And I think there's as much to learn from hearing those stories as, you know, as us talking today. So what I want to just ask is, I know most people who start a business, they actually spend a lot of time working on that business before it launches. In fact, you know, many work on a new business while they're still getting income from somewhere else, because if you're starting a business from scratch, it might take, I don't know, it might take, you know, 2 years until that business can actually pay you a wage that you can live on. So let's just go to the next question of, what should you actually be doing now if you're thinking of launching a business in the future? So what work do you wish that you'd have done before launching your business? And just what would have made it a lot easier?
This is with me, right?
Please, Trevor, yes.
Yeah. So I know how that feels, because the first business I decided to launch, it was a life coaching consultancy called Positive Living. And I've still got the name, so it may
That is genius, Trevor. I absolutely love that.
Thank you. So Positive Living, you know, crashed and burned within 6 months of getting, I gave it about a year, had 6 clients in the whole year, which was obviously not enough. And the big thing that I learned at that time was I was trying to be everything for everyone. Who was I? A life coach. Who could I help? Everybody. You know, what could I help them do? Everything. So the one big thing that I've now learned is it actually pays to be something specific to someone, and help become the answer to their solution, or become the solution to their problem, because that's one of the big mistakes that people do. They try and do everything for everyone because they think they're going to miss out on some aspect of the market. And as a result, their message is too vague, which doesn't appeal to anybody.
Absolutely. That's really important information to put across. Steve, let me just jump back to you. So what do you wish that you'd done before launching DoGood? Or, you know, how much did you actually work did you do before you actually ran up to that launch?
Well, yeah, I think I worked a lot in the background on it. And what I wish I'd done is got it out into the world sooner. We didn't get it. I mean, I started working on it just over a year ago, and we didn't get it out into the world until March. And that was through the platform of running our crowdfunder. That was kind of the springboard to launch it on social media, just kind of put a holding page for the website and start finding a way to connect with an audience. So what I wish I'd done is started that sooner. I guess I thought, you know, I wanted everything to be perfect. So I did a lot of research, you know, contacted hundreds and hundreds of people, asking them various questions about whether they would, you know, would they consider feeding their dogs vegan? Did they think it was important? What were they looking for? And I wish I'd just got it out there sooner. I guess you think, you know, that, you know, someone might steal my idea because vegan dog food doesn't really exist. And definitely, you know, this is the first ever chef cooked fresh vegan dog food. It doesn't exist. So what if someone steals this before I launch? So I won't, you know, tell anyone about it till the last minute. But the reality is that no one's going to steal your idea. You're more likely to be ignored than anything. And actually, the hardest thing is connecting with an audience and building that up. So I wish we'd started that earlier. I wish we'd put a holding page on our website and started doing our social media earlier and started shouting about what we were doing much earlier, because that is the hardest thing out of anything is people listening, you know, and finding the right people. So that's what I'd say would be my best bit of advice for I wish I'd started sooner.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are living in a world now where it's perfectly acceptable to build a business in public. And so many people actually build an audience before they've got anything to sell. So I 100% echo what you're saying there. Keith, let me come to you next. What do you think those first important steps are when you're first launching a business?
I think there's a couple of things. I think a really important thing is you have to know what you want, what you're aiming for. And there's kind of, we haven't really touched on this, but there's kind of two different things at play here. And so I guess sometimes it happens by accident, but are you going into starting your own business because you want to be your own boss? And then effectively you're creating a job for yourself and you will work alone and you will provide a service and that will give you a living and that's brilliant and it gives you the flexibility and that's fantastic. Or do you want to go for something bigger and build a business and you want to have a team of people and kind of have that vision and mission? I guess people don't always know, but I think that's important to bear in mind. And then obviously off the back of that, and what's quite interesting, you might be surprised by this, but I talk to loads of accountants all the time and I see it so much, accountants fail, their businesses fail. And it's because they haven't, you know, they might be quite good at building a job for themselves, but then if they want to start scaling and think, oh, well, my pricing at the beginning was far too low. So now I've got, you know, 100 clients and that's okay to pay me. But if I want to then build a business, I've got no margins. So I can't do it. So I think pricing is the other thing where you've got price at mind at the beginning and don't price too low. Don't price to think, oh, you know, I'm not valuing my own time. You have to value your own time. This is why I'm saying about getting expertise, because you have to think, well, what am I worth? Okay, can I get someone to do the same thing, probably better, you know, at a reasonable rate? And then that frees me up to work on what I'm good at.
Absolutely. And who'd ever thought we'd hear of accountants failing? Gosh, how does that happen? But again, you know, really important part of it. You don't have to do everything yourself. And I think that's what lots of us fall into the trap of doing when we first launch a business. We are trying to do our own accounts. We're trying to build our own web pages. We even try to print our own business cards sometimes. So yeah, absolutely. Yes. You know, it is sometimes better to bring that help in and help you to do that. Mitali, can I come to you next on this? So what do you think it's crucial for people to do before launching a business? Or what do you wish that you'd have done?
What would I wish I've done? I think, yeah, I think I would say what Steve says is just tell more people about it. I think it's strange. As a copywriter, I know this, but it's amazing. You move into a different direction. You forget everything you've learned before, which is stupid, really. You should actually just keep, learning a lifetime. As a copywriter, I remember people hiring me and saying, oh, I'd love to email my list more often. And I'd say, oh, you should email them every single day. And they're like, oh, no, I can't do that. I can't email every single day. They'd get sick of me. I'll get complaints. And I would say, do you honestly think you have somebody who opens your emails every single day? How many emails do you have right now in your inbox? And that's your primary inbox. I'm not even talking about the other inboxes that you've got. How many have you got that are unopened? So you can email somebody every single day and it's fine. You're not going to get complaints. And the people who don't like you give them a big unsubscribe link at the bottom. They can unsubscribe. There you go. So I would tell people this as a copywriter, switch to becoming an owner of a publishing company, forget everything over the last few years. So yeah, I think I was reticent in telling people about it. I now do email my list every single day. But in the beginning, it was like, oh, I just email them like a newsletter once a week. But the thing is, we live in a very noisy world now. So this idea that we're going to annoy people, chance would be a fine thing. If you're annoying somebody, you're actually probably doing something good because it means actually paying attention to you. Most people are not paying attention and you need to fight through the noise and be in people's minds when they need your products or services. So yeah, just shout about it. Don't be scared about emailing or being on social media every day or whatever it is that you do. Just keep doing it.
And that ties in very much with what Trevor was saying right at the start about that self-belief sometimes, just that fear of putting yourself out there. That is a really important part of building a business. And some of the businesses we've seen that have grown extremely well over the last couple of years, it has been because of the person running it. And some of the businesses we've seen fail, it has been because the person running it hasn't quite had that confidence. They've not got over that fear. Yeah, so these are all really, really important points to make. Let me just move on to another topic now. And we've touched on it very briefly, and it's about money, because especially in the vegan sector, I've seen a lot of people who they just come up with an idea for a business, and the first thing they do is they go out thinking they're going to get an investor on board, just because they've had an idea for a new vegan product or service. But very few of the investors that I know will actually put money into someone's idea just so that person can go try that idea out. They might put money into someone's idea if that person has a solid background and record of creating successful businesses, and they think that this next one is going to be just as successful as their last. But no, I think it's fair to say that most new businesses are self-funded, either from savings or bank loans, or even, slightly more risky options like maxing out credit cards. So I'd like to come to Keith first on this one as our financial person in the room. But do you think that you need to have money to start up a business? Is that really a barrier? Do you need to risk your house or take on huge loans to get a business off the ground, Keith?
I wouldn't risk your house. But yeah, I guess everyone's different, aren't they? Everyone's got different attitude to risk as well, and it depends on the strength of the idea. But yeah, I guess before getting an investor on board and this sort of thing, this is the whole point of networking and having a network. And I know, for example, you've got the Slack group and people are chucking ideas around and business plans, and I think that's the whole thing, isn't it? It's kind of 10 heads are better than one, and you don't need to turn up at Dragon's Den or whatever and be told your idea is rubbish. You can get enough decent expertise and feedback before that point. And yeah, if you've got a strong idea, you believe in it, find a way to make it happen.
And what kind of advice, Keith, do you give to people who are looking for money to actually start up a business?
Well, yeah, I guess it depends what stage they're at. Like you're saying, do they want to scale up, or is it literally a launch? But yeah, it's quite a difficult climate at the moment. I guess you had that window where if you fell in the right timing, you could have some good luck with the COVID loans, because the bounce back loans, for example, they were giving out like sweets. I think we'll see it was unbelievable. It was just kind of 50 grand, and I don't know if you saw it, people you know, taking the cash out and disappearing and whatever, has probably not got enough press. But yeah, I mean, these days it's a little bit tighter because obviously we're in that period where it's kind of the post bounce back loans, post CBILS, you've got the recovery loans. So someone like Nick Mayhew would be probably a better person to ask about getting finance. But yeah, obviously there's different options. If you can get someone on board with you, investor, or get a loan. Also depends around, it's like I was saying, it comes back to this, what do you actually want? Because as soon as you get an investor on board, you know, I'm not a massive fan of that. Obviously, it depends on the situation. You're actually then tied in with someone. You know, I think it's probably my character and personality a little bit, but I'd want to keep it all to myself, really. You know, I mean, I'm all up for involving the team. Involving the team's good, but you know, if you have got a brilliant idea and then suddenly you're giving away 30% of the business, well, you know, that doesn't quite sit well with me either. So, and then I think a really important thing actually to think about, you start giving away equity, then you think, well, am I doing all the work? How am I going to be compensated? Because the classic thing when you run a business, you think, okay, I'm running a business, all the risk is with me, I get all the reward, so I'll get all the profits. Then you have another thing, like someone else owns the business, I'm doing all the work, they're getting share of the profits, I'm getting a lot less, you know, and then you get into, well, okay, I need to be paid for my time, I can't just get a profit share, I actually need to be getting a salary for not only being a business owner, but working in the business as well.
Absolutely. And all really important questions. And again, like you said at the start, it's going back to having that plan for what you want as a business. If you're building up a business that you plan to sell in 2 or 3 years, then you will have a very different launch as if you're launching a business that you just want to give you an income till retirement, perhaps. So yeah, brilliant answer, Keith. Mitali, let's move to you on this question then. So do you need money to start a business?
Yes. Short answer. Yes. Yes, you do. Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, I think it was Keith who talked about this earlier. There are 2 kinds of businesses. There is the business where you essentially give yourself a job. I call it freelancing. And then there is where you have a business where you're creating an asset so that at some point you're no longer bartering time for money, because that's essentially what a job is. You give time and somebody gives you money for your time and your skills. When you become a freelancer, yes, when I became a copywriter and a ghostwriter, yes, it was wonderful for my SAD. I didn't, you know, definitely in the winter, I didn't get out of bed until 9 in the morning at the earliest. Wonderful. But I still was only earning when I was working. So I'd given myself a job. That kind of business, you still may need a little bit of startup capital because you still need to do marketing and that kind of thing. But on the whole, your startup costs are quite small. But if you're starting a business such as Steve has, you know, with vegan dog food, you need a lot of money first because you're creating an asset. But that's a mindset thing. I think that's another reason, going back to the very first question you asked, David, about why people don't get into owning their own business. First of it is, like I said, a lot of people are in a semi-coma and just they're comfortable. But another thing is that knowledge of you're creating an asset, which means you put a lot in before you can actually get anything out. So you have to have that mindset of not looking at the balance sheets and getting scared after a year because you're more in the red than you're in the black, but just saying, I'm only 12 months in and I'm building something. In the same way you build a house, you don't just, you know, lay a brick and go, right, I'm done. I need to, someone pay me rent for this brick that I've just laid. It's like, no, you need to build the rest of the house. Then you need to do the interiors. You need to furnish it. A lot of money's got to go in first before you can start taking money out of it. But as long as you go in with that mindset, then you're going to be okay.
Absolutely. And I think, like I said earlier, you know, we've had members of Vegan Business Tribe who've just signed up. And when we've had our first, you know, one-to-one with those people, they've actually said, yeah, I've just quit my job. I've got 6 months worth of savings in the bank, you know, so I need to make this business work. And it's like, yeah, that's not going to happen. You can't be launching a business with that kind of pressure. So, you know, these are all really, really important things to consider. Trevor, let's come to you next on this question. So when people come to you, do they need to have their life savings ready to invest?
So it's a really good question, and a lot of times, because we're the way we position the offering is we ask for people to have a certain amount so that we can help them with things like their branding, website, content, and marketing. And one of the things I say to people is, don't expect to just throw money and have just clients just show up, because you need money to invest in the business to then be able to get the results. And a lot of times I see people, coming to me and saying, oh yeah, so when do we start the Google ads? Or when do we start Facebook ads? I'm like, where's your brand? What are you going to put on these things? So, a lot of times people have this misconception that, oh, I need money because I need to market, but there isn't once again, going back to the P word, there isn't a plan in place, and that's so critical. So yes, money is absolutely important, and as I said, my advice to people is transition into business rather than going, I was going to say cold turkey, but we've got to find a vegan version to that.
Cold tofu is what we say.
Cold tofu, love that. Okay. So transition, and make sure that you've got what we know in business as a MVP, or a minimum viable product, where you've proved it, you've tested it, there's a market there, they've got a problem, you've got a solution, just like Steve's done right now. It's a fantastic MVP where there are vegans out there who want their dogs to be able to, to have an awesome vegan treat, or, food to eat. So once that's done, then we can start, investing a little bit more, and we can look at investors. And that's, by the way, when we talk about investors, as Keith said, it's not like they're investors just standing in line waiting to throw money at your idea. It's quite the opposite. So once you've got the MVP in place and you've got some clarity as to how much of your time and efforts that you've invested in the business, that's when you can looking at getting some more investment in.
Yeah, very, very much, Trevor. And I think one thing we always say is, you should never be putting large sums of money into something until you've proven that thing actually works first. And then you should only be putting that money in to scale that thing up and make it work better. So yeah, what 100% what you're saying there about the testing of a minimal viable product. Steve, let's just come to you on this one then. So DoGood is right at that launch stage at the moment. And so that means that you've not actually yet been able to take money off people. So has launching DoGood been an expensive venture?
Well, I think I agree with what Trevor's just said. I think the first thing is that separating your personal life from the business you're trying to start is you need to make sure that in your home life, you can survive month to month. So that's going to be personal to anybody. So whether, for me, it was, I'm quitting, my wife's going to be earning the money and paying the mortgage, and we needed to have that agreement in advance. And then we need to cut back on luxuries and cut back on some discretionary spending to make this work. And that's our agreement. For other people, it might be that they're going to go down to part-time or just do it alongside their full-time job, because typically you've either got time or money, but you rarely have both. So if you've got the money, you can pay people to do things for you at the start, to do the branding or help develop the product. Or if you've got time, you can do it yourself. And in the age of the internet and social media, you can do things like marketing and branding and all the kind of the programs you can use to create beautiful things and templates quite cheaply, to be honest. So for us, it was important to get the branding right, and we did spend some money there with it's actually my friend's branding agency, who've been fantastic. And then the rest of the money went into the nutritional consultant and the chef to make sure the product was right. So, we have sunk, some money from savings. However, as Trevor just mentioned, it is about getting the minimum viable product out there as economically as possible, because you can spend thousands and thousands and thousands on something that's perfect, and everything's perfect from the website to the branding to everything else. But then if you launch it and you haven't connected with your audience yet, or you haven't proved that there's a demand for it, then it's just money wasted. And so it is about getting the minimum viable product out there connecting with your audience, proving a demand for it, and then you are going to have, along the way, you're going to have learnings and things are going to have to change. And our recipes we think are perfect, but they may well need to change after a few months because they might upset dogs' stomachs, or dogs might not be interested in the taste. So we know we're going to have to continue to adapt and improve. And so I'd say, as long as in your personal life you can survive month to month, you need a budget to start a business, but you can do it. I mean, we're working with a product, but especially if you're working with a service and the service is yourself, I think you could do it on quite a cost-effective way to get it up and running. And I don't think money should ever stand in the way of you starting a business. And then, for us, we're self-funding and we're trying to launch and get, maybe 6 to 12 months of organic growth, so we can prove to ourselves that this is a viable business that we believe we can really scale. And that's when we may start looking at investors to kind of, give us the opportunity to scale up more quickly and get it out there. But I think you could self-fund the whole way and retain, total equity over your business in this day and age quite easily.
Yeah, and I think, Steve, you've actually made a really important point there. So if I go back to the days when I was running a design and marketing and business growth agency, we used to call this the website bounce. That quite often we knew if we were working with a startup business, we could design a brand and a website for them, and they would probably be back in 6 to 8 months for a new brand and website, because what they discovered was that original one just didn't connect with the marketplace like they initially thought they were going to do, or they completely changed direction once they actually started talking to their customers. So I think it's 100% right. Just be mindful of how much you're spending on that initial setup, and especially that initial branding, when you haven't yet fully engaged with your audience and fully worked out which of their problems your product is really going to solve.
100%.
Yeah, brilliant. So let's just start to wrap up the conversation a little bit. So what I'd like to do just for this final bit is let's just go around the room and let's ask for that one piece of advice, that one piece of wisdom from each of you. So if someone is sat there thinking, and they're watching this or listening to this, and they're thinking about starting up their own business, what's that one bit of advice you would give to them? And Mitali, I'm going to come to you first on this one. So what's the one bit of advice, or what would you say to somebody who is currently thinking about starting their own business?
Yeah, I have to apologize. Isha just decided to join the meeting. So just say hello, Isha. There we go. Do you know what I mean? She's just decided she wants to know exactly what happens in vegan businesses as well. So the one bit of advice I would say is actually going back to what you said earlier, David, where, there's a lot of people who think, I've got a great idea. And then it's like they want to do it. Either they put loads of their savings into it, or they want to find investors. And then, as you said, most investors are not really all that interested if you just have a great idea. There's too much emphasis put on great ideas. I think it's like the culture of Dragon's Den and The Apprentice and that kind of thing. A mediocre product or service executed well will do far better in this world than a brilliant product or service that's just an idea. There's a reason why in this country, I just can't go and patent an idea. You can't, I can suddenly just decide, I'll decide to patent flying saucers, and with no execution at all. And the reason why I can't do that is someone does invent it 100 years later. I make a ton of money just for dreaming it up and not thinking of the execution. Don't just think of the idea, think beyond that. How is that idea going to happen? Start thinking, making a plan. As Trevor says, you need to make a proper business plan regarding your idea and how it's going to come to fruition. Once you've got that, if you've got money yourself and you want to invest in it, then it becomes much more of a sound investment. And if you're looking for investors, there's more chance that investors will say yes to you because you actually have a plan. It's not just an idea. You've thought logically about how you're going to execute it.
Absolutely. That is brilliant advice. Steve, as someone who's actually just gone through this, what's your one piece of final advice?
I'd say from the start, do your research, to determine there's a need for your product or service and a hungry audience for it. Have a higher purpose, because things don't happen unless you make them happen, unlike when you're working for a company. So you need to have that kind of purpose, which I think people with a vegan business will typically have. and get your product out there as soon as possible and start connecting with the audience about it. Because as I said before, no one's going to steal your idea. You're more likely to be ignored initially. And then really the overall thing is just be prepared for the roller coaster of emotions. And as hard as it is, don't take rejection personally, and don't pin your self-worth to the success of your business, at least initially, because you're going to have to be prepared to work hard for little reward, and kind of take those failures as a learning opportunity instead of taking them personally, because they're going to be many failures along the way and you just got to keep learning from them.
Absolutely. And that's such good advice. Keith, if somebody comes to you and asks you for your one piece of advice on starting up your own business, what would you say to them, apart from get yourself a good accountant, obviously?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's loads of things, but I was going to talk about technology because I think time is the biggest thing for me, and as a business owner, and creating automation. I mean, I can give a quick example where an inquiry comes into us. We use Cognito forms. And then the beauty of these softwares now, all in the cloud, is you can link them all together. So there's something called Zaps. I don't know if everyone's heard of Zaps, but we use a lot of Zaps. So you get the inquiry form in, then that triggers something else, right? They're added to your newsletter. Okay, they've asked for a quote. You get the quote done. Okay, you're going to then follow up with the prospect, at a set period of time. That's all automated. They're going to get a link to your Calendly to book a meeting with you. And it's all, it's all set out. So that obviously it depends what business you're in, but that marketing journey. So for me, it's great because it's like I said before we started, I was at the office yesterday, I was at a conference, and I come in this morning and we've got 2 new sign-ups. So if you can get the technology working for you and kind of create that sort of passive benefit as well, I think it just takes you to a whole new level, really.
I couldn't agree with that absolutely more. Okay, thank you for that. And then finally, Trevor, as our startup guru, what's your one closing bit of wisdom for the people listening or watching this?
I'd say believe in yourself. That would probably be the most important thing. I think we all touched on this at some point or another during today's conversation, which is this, the sooner you start believing that you're worth it, that your idea has a place in this world, and you take action, that it's like what we always say as vegans, what's your biggest regret? Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I go vegan 5 years, 10 years earlier? Same thing with the business. So, and 2 other reasons why it's so important to believe in yourself. Of course, one is, to start at the right time. But the other one is your business will eventually be a manifestation of who you are. So if you've got these limiting beliefs around money and, I'm not deserving of it, guess what? That's what's going to start, showing up in your business as well. And as Steve said, it's not, all rainbows and unicorns. There are some tough times. So the more you believe in yourself and in your idea and in your purpose, the more likely it's going to be that you're going to ride through those rough times and see successful horizons. So, believe in yourself and everything will come to fruition.
And that is a wonderful piece of advice for us to finish on. Thank you for that, Trevor. So thank you all for your time on what will have been a really enlightening discussion for a lot of people on the realities of starting your own business. As I said, we could have easily just spent an hour talking to each person on this one, but let me just quickly go around the room and let's just find out that if people do want to follow on and connect with you or find out more about your business, where can they go? So Mitali first from Let's Tell Your Story Publishing. Mitali, how do people connect with you?
Well, my website is letstellyourstory.com. So it's quite simple. So just go and find it. Or you can find me on any social media platform. I'm always Mitali Book Pro.
That is wonderful. Keith from Vegan Accountants, how can people connect with yourself?
So yeah, we're veganaccountants.co.uk, and then we're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Vegan Accountants UK.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Keith. And Steve, if somebody actually wants to try some amazing DoGood vegan dog food, where do they go to find out more?
Yeah, so it's order online for home delivery. Our website is wearedogood.co.uk. We're also on Facebook and Instagram at wearedogood, and DoGood is DoGood.
Thank you for that, Steve. And then finally, Trevor from The Freedom Switch. Where do people go to find out more about yourself?
Brilliant. Yep, just thefreedomswitch.com, or you could look me up, Trevor Banerjee. Banerjee rhymes with energy, so that's nice. Positive living and energy as well. Yeah, and you can find me on social media. And yeah, let's have a chat.
I'm going to go book that domain name, Positive Living. I think that's amazing. Okay, so, and myself, I have been David Pannell. And if you'd like to listen and watch back to more great content like this, then do come and check it out at veganbusinesstribe.com. And that's where you can also join our amazing community of vegan business owners and get support from not just myself and Lisa, but also from the people like the amazing folk that you've just been listening to on this panel today. Because we mustn't forget that we are all on a mission. You know, your business can and should be your form of activism. And we've heard a lot of that today. It's not just enough to have a vegan business. You need to have a successful vegan business that is actually going to make a real impact so that it can move us ever so quicker towards this vegan world that we're all working towards. So thank you so much for my 4 guests today. And thank you also to the team at VegFest UK for both hosting this event, but also just for continuing to provide such an amazing platform throughout the last couple of years when in-person events haven't been possible. So thank you for your time, and we will catch you on the next one.